The very first video I ever posted to this channel got quickly taken down because it showed a miner doing dangerous things, or something like that. That miner was little 9-year-old me excitedly talking about the first forge I had built out of an old metal wash tub and a bicycle pump. So, rest in peace that video, but I'm 25 years old now, so that means that I can show y'all once more that y'all really don't need a whole bunch of money or fancy equipment in order to get started forging knives. Now, yes, you can technically go out there and get a fairly decently cheap hobby forge, but the problem is it's super small, it's cheaply made, and sometimes you just want to make really cool big stuff, like a sword or something like that, you know? I'm not giving you any ideas, but I'm giving you some ideas. So my intention for this video is to give y'all a best bang for your buck option that allows you to have a much larger forge that's much more capable at a similar price, if not cheaper, than those little hobby forges. This will be a much bigger step forward because we're going for a propane forge rather than the basic charcoal forge. So keep in mind that none of this is educational and is purely for entertainment purposes. Don't do anything too dumb, dangerous, or different. But enough carrying on, I've done enough talking, let's get right into the build and see what's up. Right, so the main money saver of this project is definitely the propane bottle that we start off with. You can find these all over the place at metal scrap yards in all different sizes and shapes, and all for just a few bucks a piece. As you can see, I've already cut up this specific propane bottle because I already planned on turning it into a forge a long time ago, but the basics are that you want to cut one side off cleanly, cut the entire end off, and the other side you want to cut a little window that will be the main opening for your forge. Once you've made those cuts, we'll come back to the bottle a little later, but for now we need to focus on holding the bottle up in the air somehow, so we're going to need to build a basic little wooden frame. We'll start by figuring out exactly how wide the frame needs to be by measuring the tank from side to side and leaving a few spare inches because this is going to be a little bit of a cradle. Whatever measurement you come up with, go ahead and cut 2 boards to that length. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in order to make this bottle actually stay in place, we need to design some sort of cradle, so all we have to do is round out these boards a little bit to the same size and shape as the propane bottle itself. So what I do is I take the open end of the propane bottle and I lay it down on one of the boards and trace the outline to get the exact curve that I need. The other board is just there to support it at the correct height. I'm not actually marking it yet because I will cut one board out to fit and match the other board to it so that both of them are consistent. Now for me, it was unexpectedly difficult to cut these curves out of this 2x6, so be aware of that. It's a little bit too thick for the standard scroll saw. My bandsaw kept binding up, so I ended up having to go with a handheld jigsaw and just carefully cut out the rounded curves. And in the end, it was a little bit janky, but this doesn't need to be a precise cut, just something that's going to roughly hold the propane bottle in place and keep it from rolling off of the frame. Regardless of how you go about making your cuts, once you have those 2 boards cut to shape, well, all you have to do is build the rest of the frame around them. This part's super simple, no rocket science here. All you have to do is figure out how long you want the frame to be based off of your specific propane bottle, cut 2 boards to that length, and screw them together on the curved boards that you cut earlier. Once you have that framed cradle, all you have to do is cut 4 boards to the length that you want for the legs. So figure out how high off the ground you want the forge to be, cut the boards to that length, and screw those together on the inside of the frame. And doing all that will make a sturdy, basic frame. You can obviously add whatever kind of supports that you want to this if you want it to be more sturdy. However, I know that mine will be sitting on loose gravel, so I want my legs to be able to flex a little bit in order to kind of adjust to that uneven surface a little bit. As long as you make the frame with decently sturdy wood, in my case 2x6s and 2x4s, you don't really have to worry. It's going to be plenty strong enough for just holding the bottle in place. It's not like you're going to be pushing around or anything like that. Now that we have the base of the forge built, let's go back to the bottle and figure out how exactly we're going to fit those gas fittings. I ended up going with a simple Venturi-style dual burner from Amazon. And while yes, you can go out and find these gas pieces and kind of piece them together to make your own little burners, I did that last time, and I found out that between driving to 14 different stores to find the parts that you need and then having to order some online because none of the stores around you have them, the amount of hassle and cost and shipping and the cost of the individual pieces, it really doesn't match up. You can end up just buying a cheaper burner from online. So, yeah, this is one case where DIY doesn't actually save you very much money. Just go with a simple burner from online and you'll be good to go. Whether you end up building or buying your burners, the installation is pretty much the same, and it's super simple. All you have to do is drill 2 holes. Well, however many holes for however many burners you have. So, you start by drilling a small little pilot hole, and then you use a decent quality hole saw that's good enough to cut through thin mild steel like this. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You cut out these 2 holes, which will allow the burners to slide in from underneath, and we'll attach them later. But for now, we need to go ahead and focus on adding the insulation to this forge before we fully install these gas fittings. For a basic propane forge like this, where you're trying to insulate an area that is rounded rather than squared off, I would say definitely go with KO wool rather than going with forge bricks. But definitely do your research on which type of KO wool you're getting and how you need to treat it, because yes, those tiny little fibers can get all up in the air, and I should have been wearing a gas mask during this process, but I didn't because I couldn't be bothered. And then I did my research afterwards and regretted it because I was like, okay, that is not good to get those little fibers all up in my system. But you do you, make sure you do your research and stay as safe as possible. Moving on, we're gonna be using KO wool. The only basic requirements are that we're covering the entire inside of the bottle to make sure that there is no exposed metal, because the inside of this forge will be getting super hot and we don't want to be burning or melting the outside structure of our forge. And in this situation, I went with a thinner layer of 1-inch thick KO wool across the entire top so that I could fit the burners through easier. And on the bottom, I used 2 layers of 2-inch thick KO wool, because not only is that the direction that the flames will be directly impacting, but it also elevated the bottom of the forge high enough to match the level of the opening that I made for the front of the forge. Now for the rear end of the forge, I know that I wanted to have an end cap on it, so I pulled the insulation out a little bit and trimmed off about 1.5 inches to 2 inches so that I could put a thick 2-inch layer of insulation on the end cap and not have to worry about it pressing up against the inside insulation. It more so just fits together like a little puzzle piece. With the insulation part of it taken care of, I went ahead and took an old hinge that I had laying around and just drilled a few holes and put a few screws in to kind of hold the end cap in place. I don't care too much, again, that this is super strong. You can obviously set up whatever kind of hinge you want, but in this case, I literally just need something to hold the end cap in place, and we're going for simplistic function over form. So you do whatever you would like with your forge, but for this one, it works, and that's good enough for me. With all that done and all the insulation fully installed, now we can finally go ahead and attach our gas fittings. So I go from the inside and push the burners up, and then I take this simple pipe fitting holder. I don't know the technical term for this, but you can find them at Lowe's or Home Depot. And all it does is it holds the top of the metal pipe to prevent the burner from falling down into the forge. Again, there are a few different ways that you can make this a lot more sturdy if you need to, but in my case, this is all that I really need. It's going to be sitting stationary, and as long as the burners don't fall down into the forge, I'm good to go. So I held the burners at the correct position, however high I wanted them to be. You kind of want them to stick out from the insulation a little bit to get the full Venturi effect and all of that. But once you have them in the correct position, you just use that little pipe fitting, screw it down, and hold them into place so they don't fall down any further. And then you can go ahead and start connecting all the other pieces. In this case, I just installed the burner pipe, and now I install the burner nozzles in each one. And then I take this little splitter hose and connect them to the top of the nozzles. And that splitter line runs all the way back to the propane bottle itself. So the gas fittings, not too complicated, just basically connect one thing at a time. And it's like connecting little Legos together to make a little pipe system that pumps gas that can explode and kill you. So be very careful with all this. Just saying. Probably seal them or something like that. Do your research. This is the basics. This is not the in-depth. With all that being said though, that's pretty much it. Now we have a propane forge that's elevated off the ground, it's fully insulated, and has the gas fittings that we need to burn the propane and make a really, really hot forge. So I got it cranked up and did a few tests with it, and I think that for this specific case, I'll probably add another burner in the future, but as it is, it works plenty fine for any types of knives that I need to forge. And yes, of course, the most important thing, I can in fact forge a sword in it. If I need the extra length, I can just take the end cap off so that the sword can reach all the way through, but this is a 3.5 to 4 foot long propane bottle, so I shouldn't have any issues with that just yet. At the end of the day, this this is a super simple, super basic, but very easy to build propane forge that can get you into the world of forging a lot more conveniently than having to deal with charcoal forges and how expensive it is to replace the charcoal all the time. And of course, there is a long-running debate in the knife makers community about whether or not it is cheaper to run propane or charcoal. But if you decide to go with propane, this is one of the cheapest, easiest ways that I've found to get into it without having to be confined to those tiny little hobby propane forges. So with all that said, I think that about wraps it up for this video. I hope that you found it informative and entertaining because it is totally not for educational purposes. And yeah, happy forging. I hope y'all can get into the hobby and have a fun time with it. If you're already a veteran forger and just looking into getting into the propane side of things, well, hopefully this gets you a good little springboard to start off on. And that's about it. So if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. And until next time, yeah, stay happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Bye. I need to figure out an intro for these. I don't know.